So now we want to look at a topic called overheads. That is our topic for today. It's called overheads. So I've shared the notes. In case you don't have the notes, you let me know. So the topic highlight, the things that you're supposed to know under this topic is definition of the term, definition of the word overheads. Number two, allocation of overheads. Allocation of overheads. And number three is reapportionment. Reapportionment. And number four is absorption of overheads. So these are the topic highlights. Those are things you're supposed to know. They test alongside those three. Excuse me. So those are the things that they test under that particular topic and the things that you're supposed to know. So we'll go one by one. Hopefully by today we'll be through. So I have shared the notes. In case you don't have the notes, most of us are in one group or another where the notes are being shared. So in case you don't have the notes, immediately after you will notify me. You will notify me after this so that we can be able to continue. So now we start with the definition. What is the word overheads? What is the word overhead? So overheads are indirect costs that cannot be traced in the final product. These are indirect costs that cannot be traced in the final product. Indirect costs that cannot be traced in the final product. That is what we call overhead. So when you're making a product, the cost composition, we have three elements. We have the material cost, then we have the labor cost, and of course we have overheads. So now, giving an example of this chair, it is very possible to tell how much was the timber that came up with this table, isn't it? We can be able to tell exactly that it costed us maybe 2,000, 3,000, isn't it? So we can be able to trace the material cost in the final product. And then we have labor cost. The person who was engaged to come up with the chair, we can be able to tell how much was given in terms of cost, isn't it? Maybe it was given 2,000. But we have some other costs that cannot be traced in the final product. Like, for example, the electricity cost or the rent where the workshop, the rent for the workshop, the cleaning cost. So there are the other costs that you cannot be able to trace in the final product. Those ones we call them overheads. They are the products that we cannot be able to trace in the final product, such as rent, electricity, cleaning services, etc. So the only costs that you can be able to trace in a final product, there are two. So they are the material cost and the labor cost. So these are the ones we call them overheads. They are indirect costs that you cannot be able to trace. So that is the definition. And then I will go to allocation. To allocate means to distribute overheads to the departments that were responsible in generating the overheads. To allocate means to distribute or to share the overhead cost amongst the departments that were responsible in generating the overheads. So now when you're distributing, for example, if we have this floor and we have three departments on the floor, we have a department that is responsible for cutting these chairs. So that department will be housed in one of the sections of the floor. And then we have another department that is engaged in joining. And finally, we have a department that is used for finishing up. So those are three departments. And now we have the rent cost. The rent cost, maybe we are paying 200,000 for the rent for the whole space for these three departments. So we want to share that cost, isn't it? So now that is what is called allocation. Then when you're allocating, when you go to the notes now, when it comes to the allocation, we go to the notes. We use what we call the base or the method. So there we have written there the overhead and the base that we use. For example, the one that I've mentioned, we have rent and rates. So we have an overhead called rent and rates. So how do we share this one? We use the floor area occupied, the floor area. So a department that is occupying the largest area, it is given the largest share of the cost, isn't it? And then we also have an overhead called electricity, lighting, air conditioning, and heating. So the same that one, we also use the floor area. It is there written in the notes. Then we have insurance. If you have insured maybe you've insured the machines within within the organization or the factory. So now that one we share in accord. We are paying premiums, insurance premium. So we are paying insurance premiums. So we share the insurance premium based on the value of the asset that is insured, isn't it? So if you have insurance cost, we share it in that manner. And then we have what we call depreciation. We also share it in accordance to the value. And then we have employees' liabilities. We share it in accordance to the wages paid. Canteen expenses, number of workers, water consumed. So we have a question here. It was done in June 2010. June 2010, question number 1. We want to see that question. We're going to use it as an example on how to allocate overheads, how to apportion overheads. And then we'll learn about reapportionment and then absorption. That one will be the end of that particular topic. So now we go to June 2010. So we have those past papers. We have a set of past papers, June 2010. We have those past papers. In case you don't have them, I'll share. We have the past papers. Most of us are in one group or another where we can be able to access materials. These past papers, there are two sets. There are two sets. We have the old and the new. So the old one is a little bit faint. You can be able to see it. So in that old past papers, you trace where we have that June 2010 question number. So you open it and trace June 2010 question number 1. 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 So I think it is page 42. It is page 42 of that old past papers. Page 42 of the old past papers. In case you have June 2010 question number, June 2010 question number 1. So we are doing overheads and we are doing June 2010 question number 1. Our topics is overhead and we are doing CPA June 2010 question number 1. Remember, this topic is the same for ATD and section 4, foundation, intermediate. So if you are doing ATD, this is also a relevant topic for you, and the testing is the same. So I'll read the question and then we do it together. So the question reads, Auto Tech Company Limited has 2 production departments, machining and assembly. The company also has 3 service departments, stores, engineering services, and general stores. So there's a sentence there that is a little bit hidden, or it is rubbed, but I can read it. So it reads, the engineering service department serves the machining department only. It reads, the engineering service department serves the machining department only. The engineering service department serves the machining department only. And then you'll be given the following data relates to the year 2009. You'll be given there a table. And then we have additional information. Number 1, you've been given there the breakdown of the annual budgeted overheads costs for the year as follows. You've been given the indirect wages and consumable supplies. Note number 2, we have been given the other general expenses incurred during the year included. So we've been given other general expenses. Note number 3, the machining department is responsible for a special loading of insurance of the building because of certain fire risk. This results in total building insurance costs for the machining department of 50% of the annual premium. Number 4, the general service department is located in a building owned by the company. The building is valued at 320,000 shillings and is charged into costs at a national rent of value of 6% per annum. The cost is an additional to the rent and rates shown above. Number 5, the values of issues of material to the production departments are in the same proportion as for the consumable supplies. And number 6, general service expenses are reapportioned based on production direct labor hours. Required number 1, Overhead analysis sheet, 8 marks. Number 2, reapportion the service cost to production department, 2 marks. Enrollment number 3, overhead absorption rate for 2 production department, 2 marks. Total marks, 12. So we'll open out, we call the overhead analysis sheet. Overhead analysis sheet. So we'll have here overhead analysis sheet. This is how it appears. So here we have overheads, and then we have amount. So this is the overhead. This is amount. And this is the base. This is the ratio. And this is, we have the first department there, we have machining, we have assembly, and then we have the company house stores, and then we have engineering service, engineering, and then general support. And here we have general support. So this one is overhead analysis sheet. So we use overhead analysis sheet to assist us to allocate or to distribute or to apportion overheads amongst the department that were responsible in generating the overheads. So they want us to do this one. So you can just follow, and then of course you can write later on. So now we want to allocate overheads. So the first overhead we have there is in addition to note number 1. We have what we call indirect wages. So right there, indirect, that is the first overhead there. So this one, it has already been allocated. So you write there allocated. So the ratio will be dash. So the machining department is given 354, 320. And then the assembly department is given 64, 880. The stores is 32, 800. And the engineering service department is 21, 360. And the general support is 29, 360. So that one is already allocated. So we add it, and then we get the total here. Can we add all this? So this one is already allocated. So just write there allocated, and then you add them very fast. That one is already allocated. So this question is on page 42. Is it for page 42 for the old question papers? So that is the overhead analysis sheet. How much is this? 542, 720. So these are 542, 720. And then the next overhead there is consumable supplies. So right there, consumable supplies. So that one is also allocated. The ratio will be dash. So the 123, 200, 123, 200. And then this is 16, 800. The next one, assembly stores is 11, 200. And the next one is 16,000. The next one is 13,600. So it's already allocated. So just give it to, you just note it to each and every department according to the allocation. The total? 180, 800, isn't it? The next overhead in line is depreciation on machinery. So we have depreciation machinery. That is the next. The cost we have been given is 176. So from the table above that is given, we choose the suitable base or the suitable method to use, to allocate. So the first method there we have, the first item, the first allocation mode or base is the book value of the machinery. So we have the depreciation of machinery, we have book value, we have area occupied, we have effective horsepower, we have production direct labor hours, and capacity, we have machine hours. So amongst those ones, which one is the best? Amongst those ones, we use, so that one we use the book value. There is the depreciation of machinery, we use the book value So here we use the book value as our base. That is the most suitable. So the book values here we have been given, that is a base. We have given the machining department, the book value in the machining department is 840,000. And then for assembly is 120,000. Stores, it is 48,000. And then we have engineering. Engineering is 144,000. These are the values. And then we have general support, it is 48,000. So we can look for a digit that can divide across, or before that, we can kill the zeros because they run across, isn't it? And then we look at a number that can be able to divide across. Let us try 12, isn't it? 12, you divide by 140, what do you get? 12 divided by 140, 840, sorry. Huh? 12 divided by 70. And then 12 divided by 120. Eh? So this one is 10. Then 12 divided by 48 divided by 12, sorry. Eh? 2, it is 2. 4. 144 divided by 12. 12, isn't it? And then this one is 4. We can reduce it further. We can also look at a number that can even reduce these values in the further, isn't it? Like for example, 2. This one goes here 30, 35. 2 here, how many? 5. Here twice, here 6, here 2. So now that is 35. That is our ratio. 35 is 2. 35 is to 5. Is to 2 is to 6 is to 2. So we add these ratios. 35 plus 5, which is 40. 42, 48, 50. So we take 50, 35 over 50 times this value. What do you get? 35 over 50, you multiply by 176,000. Eh? So this one will be 123,200. Next. So you take 5 over 50 times. Sorry. So this one will be 17,600. Next. You take 2 over 50 times 176. What do you get? Yeah? 70/40. I think the last one was also 70/40. And this other one, 6 out of 50 times that amount. Yeah? 21,120. So this is 21,120. 21,120. So now, in case you are unable to come up with the ratios and you have these values, you don't need to struggle. You don't need to stress yourself. What you do, you just take for machining, for example, you take the value of the machining, which is 840, over the total value of the machines, which is 1.2 million. And then you multiply by the cost that is being shared, which is 176,000. You still get the same value, which is 123,200. So you do that one for all the departments in case you have issues in terms of generating the smallest values. So you do that one. So you should not leave that question like that. So that is how we share depreciation on machinery. Then we go to insurance, machinery. We have insurance, machinery. That is the next overhead. The total cost is how much? 32,000. So amongst the bases given, which is the base? We have the book value, machinery, and then we have the area square, we have effective horsepower. Which one is the best? We want to share the cost of insurance on machinery. We said we use the book value, isn't it? We use the book value. So the ratio is still 35:5:2:6:2. Already you have done the ratios. So it will be 35 over 50 times 2,000. Can we do that one? Eh? So this one will be 22,400. The next one, 3,000. So this one will be 3,200. Next. Eh? 158. So this is 128, 12,800. 12,800, isn't it? 1280 out. 1280. Next. Huh? 3840. And this other one will be 1280 or 3200. The last one. It will be 1280. Yeah? And then we go to the next overhead. This is very easy. What we are doing here, we are only sharing the overheads amongst the departments. That is what it means by to allocate overheads. So for example, here we have an overhead called insurance and machinery. And we have 4 departments. We have a department called machining. We have another one called assembly. We have another one called stores, engineering, and general support. So these are the departments that generated this overhead. So we are sharing. Very easy. And then now we go to the next overhead, which is insurance of building. So we have the insurance building. In insurance building, the total value indicated there is how much? 14,400. So 14,400. There is a note that affects that particular overhead, which is note number 3. It reads, the machining department is responsible for special loading of insurance of the building because of certain fire risks. This results in total building insurance cost for the machining department at 50% of the annual premium. So we are being told this department has special risks. And because of that, it takes 50% of the annual premium. So already that one is already allocated. 50% of this one is how much? So 7,200 here. So, but before that, what is a suitable base or method that can we use to allocate for the given basis? Which one is the best to use? Can we use the book value of the machinery? We want to allocate the costs of insurance premium of the building among this department. Now my question is, which of the bases given is the best? The first one is the book value of machinery. Do we use the book value of machinery? This is a building, remember? So we use the floor area. So the floor area, the machinery department occupies 11,000 square meters. And the assembly department occupies 8,000 square meters. The other one is 2,000. And the other one is 2,500. Lastly, 1,500. So we look at a number that can divide across. Maybe we use 500. Okay? 11,000 divided by 500. 11,000 divided by 500. 22. 16. 4, 5, and 3, isn't it? Is it so? Now, this one has already been allocated. Out of the total cost, 50% has already been allocated to machining. So now the other department will share the remaining amount of 7,200 in the ratio of 16. So we're going to use here floor area. So you write here F floor area. So they're going to share it in the ratio of 16 is to 4, is to 5, is to 3. So they're going to share that proportion. Already the other one has been allocated, so we exclude it. So 16 plus 4 is 20, plus 5, 25, 28. So 16 out of 28 times 7,200, the remaining amount. Are we happy? The remaining amount. 7,000. So 28, 16 out of 28 times 7,200, what do you get? Eh? So this is 4114. Next. Huh? 1028. Next. 1285. And then lastly, $771. I hope you are right, isn't it? So that way we are through with that cost insurance of building. We go to the next cost is power. So the next cost is power. So the total cost indicated for power is 28,800. We check, we identify the best or the suitable method or the basis given to use to distribute that particular cost. So the first one, we have the book value of machinery. Can we use that one? We have area. Can we use that one? We are using power. So we can use effective horse. So we can use effective horsepower. We can use effective horsepower. So that one we can use it the way it is. 85 is to 5. It is to dash, it is to 10, and it is to dash. So that one you can use it the way it is. So 85 plus 5 is 90, plus 10 it's 100. So it's 85 over 100 divided by 28, multiplied by 28, 800. So what do you get? So this one is 24,480. Next. $1,440. So this is 1440. This is dash, and this other one. Eh? 2880, and lastly it is dash. So we are through with that one. And then we go to the next one, which is lighting and heating. So we have lighting and heating. So lighting and heating, the total cost for lighting and heating is 24,000. So for lighting and heating, which is the suitable base? Floor area. So we use the more area you occupy, the more cost you're given. So here we have the floor area. So now we use the entire ratio, which was 22 is to 16, it is to 4, it is to 5, it is to 3. It was 50. Is it 50? So it will be 22 out of 50 times 24,000. How much do you get? Excuse me. 10. So this one will be 10,560. Next. So this one is 7,680. Eh? 1920. Eh? So this is 2,400. And lastly, so this one will be 1,440. And then we go to the last expenditure or the last cost, which is rent and rates. So we have rent and rates. Rent and rates is 56,400. But before you distribute any cost, you need to check whether we have any additional information that is attached to that particular cost. Now we have an additional information that is affecting rent and rates. This is additional information number 4, which says the General Services Department is located in a building owned by the company. The building is valued at 320,000 and is charged into cost at a national rent value of 6% per annum. This cost is an additional to the rent and rate shown above. So what they are saying here is we have this department here called General Support. It is housed in a building owned by the company, and therefore it is not responsible in generating this overhead. When you are distributing that overhead, you're going to exclude this particular department. However, there is an additional cost. We call it notional rent. Notional means imaginary. For example, you're doing business in your own building. So it's your own building. So you don't pay rent to anyone, isn't it? But you can just imagine, supposing I was in another building, how much will I be paying rent? So you deduct that cost, isn't it? So that is what is happening. So there's an additional cost of 6% of notional rent of the value of the building that is housed by this particular department that is owned by the company. So we're going to allocate this one. Of course, rent and rates, we're going to use the floor area, but we're going to exclude this general support. We're going to use 22:16:4:5. We're going to exclude the 3, isn't it? This department, its ratio is 3. Are we together? Huh? So now this is 22 plus 16 plus 4 plus 5. That one will be 47, isn't it? So it's going to be 22 out of 47 times 56,400. What do you get? So this one is going to be 26,400. Next. So this one is going to be 19,200. $4,800. 4,800. $6,000. So this dash, and then here we're going to write notional rent. Notional rent. So it is 3%, 6%, is it so? 6% of the value of the building, 6% of 320,000. What do you get? 6% of the value of building. So this is going to be an additional cost, 19,200. It's already allocated. So this is dash, 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 dash. So it will be 19,200 here. So we are through with, now we get the totals downwards. We add downwards. So can we do it 1 person to 2 person can add this one and 2 others? So 2 of you can add the last one, 2 of you, the second last, 2 as we go very fast. We go very fast. We are adding now downward. We have already finished our allocation. We have finished our allocation. $72,691. The other person who was adding alongside here, is it this correct? The next, which one? 74 or engineering? 74. I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. You add it very fast, add very fast. Anyone who has added any column? Which one? This is 26,400 if you're not saying it properly. Anyone who has added? Service. How much? 72? 016. 068. Apana. Still how much? 60. 016. 60,068. I think then it 60,068. Engineer 74. 74,885. Are you sure? I add quite before you go 1 minute. You need to take very little time in adding. Very little time. I think this is 691, 760. The first one. 691, 691, 760. Anyone with a different answer? This is 134, 914. This one is 69, I think so. There's one digit missing, and this one should be, I think, 86, if I'm not wrong. Sasa, unless kuna number one inafai kuwe hivyo. Ya mwisho hii. Okay, sawa. So that is what it means to allocate overheads. Nani hajaelewa hiyo kitu? So long as you know the base, and then now the ratio is not an issue. The ratios we have been given, for example, we have been given here, we are sharing, for example, we have a cost on what we call depreciation of machinery, isn't it? And they say we are using the book values. We are using the book according to the value of the machine in that particular department. We have depreciation of the machinery, isn't it? So now the value of the machine in the machining department was 840,000. It is given there at the first table. Is it so? The value of machine in assembly department was 120. The value of machine in stores was 48,000. The value of machine in engineering 144, general service, isn't it? Then we deleted the zeros because they are common across, isn't it? Then we looked at a value that can divide across. The first one was we divided by 12, isn't it? So we got 70, 10, 4, 12, and so we divided all these values with 12. Then we reduced them further by 2, isn't it? And then we said when you have issues in terms of generating the ratios, you don't need to worry. You just take the value of that particular department over the total value times the cost that you're sharing, isn't it? It will still give you the same value. That is what we did, isn't it? Huh? Huh? I'm saying if you can't be able to get these ratios, you are maybe having difficulties generating the ratios. You take the value of the particular department over the total, which is 1.2, times the cost. Sinisawa. The one total is this one that we are sharing. The total is there under the check in your question. The total is there. You are not seeing the totals. You're not seeing the totals. So when you add it, 40 plus 120 plus 48 plus 142, you get 1.2. Is it so? Yes. The base we already have given you the table that I give you the table. They have told you if you have an overhead cost called rent and rates, you use the flow area. Correct? I've given you the table there, the base. Even your own reasoning. For example, you have a cost on insurance or building. Alongside those bases that have been given, which is the suitable according to you. Can you use the insurance on flow? You can use using the book value of machinery? No, you cannot, isn't it? So now alongside, I've given you the guidelines, the first table there. I've told you the cost and the base. For example, they have told you the rent and this in the notes. We use what we call floor area occupied. If you have a cost on rent, isn't it? If you have electricity lighting, you still use the floor area. Insurance, I told you, use the value of the asset. Depreciation, use the value of assets. So those ones have given you the guidelines. But if you do more questions and you maybe meet any cost that you are unable to share, then you can always consult, isn't it? We have so many other questions of this kind. Okay. Now we are through, I told you there are 4 items that you're supposed to know under this one. There is what we call allocation of overhead. This is what we have done here. Then now we go to the second last item, which is called reapportionment of overhead. To reapportion means we have these service departments that are not engaged or they are not used, they are not for production purposes, these service departments. So reapportion means is to redistribute the service cost to production departments. Because these service departments are not used for production, we redistribute their cost to production department, isn't it? We have 4 methods we can use to do that. So we want to learn those methods. We call them, the first one is called we have a method that we can use to redistribute the service cost to production cost. The first method is called repeated redistribution. I've written there in the notes, or continuous allocation method. The second method is called simultaneous equation method or linear algebra. And the third one is called step-down method, and the fourth one is direct method. In some other question, they will give you the method to use. Like this one, we had been given the method to use. But before we look at this question to redistribute this service cost to this production department, let us look at those four methods, how they work. And then we go back to the handout. So we are doing what we call reapportionment, and reapportionment, we are saying it's the redistribution of the service department cost to production. So we have a question there. We want to use that question as a demonstration question and to see how we redistribute the service department costs. So the question read in the handout, it reads K Limited has 3 production departments and 2 service departments. The following is the budgeted factory overhead for the period. So we have the production department A, B, C. And then we have service department X and Y. So already we have been given them, they have already given the allocated overheads. They have already done this for us. They have given us the final figures. And then you have been given there a table also showing how the departments are benefiting from the service department. So for example, X, which is service department, gives A 20%. And then X gives B 30%, it gives C 35%, it doesn't give itself anything, and then it gives Y 15%. So required, reapportion the service department cost using repeated redistribution. So the first method here is called repeated redistribution. You can use this method here. So here you come here and write the department. We have A, and then we have B, we have C, and then we have X and Y. So here you write the overhead. These overheads are already allocated. So here we have been told this one has 240, so you write here 240. And the other one has 180, you write there 180. And the other one has 220, you write there 220. X has 86,000. And Y has 44,000. So now we start with the department X, the first department, the service department. We redistribute its overhead in accordance to the percentages given on how they benefit from X. So that one you must be given the percentages of how the departments are benefiting from that particular service departments. So the question will give you the percentages. So now we come here and say first distribution. This is first distribution. So we start with service X. We start with service X, this one. So we distribute this one, 86,000. So A takes 20%. So out of this total cost of X, we give A 20% of it. Can we give it? 17,400. So this one is going to be 17,400. So we give yes 17,400, 17,200, and the other one gets 30%. 30% of 86,000 is how much? 25. So this one will give it 25,800, and the next one. The next one is 35%. 35% of 86,000. So this one will be 30,100. And lastly, Y gets 15% of 86,000. How much is that? Y get 15%. So 12,900. At that point, we have distributed all the overheads of department X. But you see, we have overhead of Y, isn't it? So we come here and say service Y. So Y, we're going to distribute the allocated overhead plus the one that it received from X, isn't it? So it will be 44,000 plus 12,900. What would that be? 56,900. So we're going to distribute 56,900 across on how they are benefiting from Y. So A gets 30% of benefit from Y. So 30% of 56,900 is how much? 17,000. So this one the same, 17,070, 17,070. X gets 10%, which is Excuse me. So it's going to be 56, 90. So we are through with the first distribution. But you see now Department X has also got something now from Y, isn't it? So it will force us to go to the second distribution. Second distribution. So we start with X again. We start with X. It is the one that has overheads for 5690. So we share again across the departments using the percentages given. So 20 of this one is how much? 1138. So this one will be 1138. The next one, 30% of 5690 now. 1707. Is it so? 1707. And then the next one is 35% of 5690, which is 1992. So this one will be 1992. And then the other one is 15%. So 15% of 5690, which is 850. So this one will be 854. So we distribute Y. It has 854. 854 times 30%. So that one will be 2. This will be 256, 256, 256. Then this is 854. 854 times 10%, which is, so this one will be 85. Is it so? And then we go to the third distribution. Third distribution. Third distribution, we start with the Department X again, which is 85. So with the percentages given, that is 20, 30, 35. So we take 20% of 85, which is 17. And the other one is 30% of 85, which is 26. You can round it off, 26. And then 0.35 times 85. This one will give you 30. And the other one is 15%, isn't it? Of 85. That one will give you, is it 13? 13. And then now we go to Y. We distribute this 13 using 30. This one will get 4, 4, and 4, isn't it? Then 13, this other one gets 0.1, isn't it? 1.3. So now, so long as your overheads falls below 5% to any department, you stop at that point. You see this one now is 0, isn't it? And this is 1.3. So that will be the end of your distribution. So you keep on distributing these overheads until you come to the end. Now you see at the end of this all, this service department do not have any overheads, isn't it? And then now you come and add them across. You add them across. So you add downwardly. You add them downwardly. So you start with the 240,000 for the first one, plus 17,200, plus 17,070, plus 1138, plus 256, plus 17, plus 4. So that one will give you 275, 685. So this one will give you 275, 685. Then you go to the next one, 180,000, plus 25,800, plus 170,70, plus 1707, plus 256, plus 30. So that one will give you 224, 863. You go to the last one, 220,000, plus 3,100, plus 17,070, plus 1992, plus 256, plus 34. So that one will give you 269, 452. So that is what we call repeated redistribution method. Repeated distribution method. So before I forget, you can write assignment on the same. You can write assignment so that I don't forget. We have a question of that kind. You can write assignment. November 2017, question number 1B. November 2017, CPA, November 2017, question number 1B. You check that one. CPA November 2017, question number 1B. So that is what we call repeated redistribution method. That is method number 1. We go to method number 2. We call it simultaneous equation method. Can I grab this one? Anyone with a question on this kind? Yes.
Assuming the ratios of the distribution ratios of change.
Yeah. At each level.
Assuming the first distribution, second distribution, and third distribution. Rather, is there a possibility that these ratios may change?
No. You'll be given the percentage, the ratios on how the other departments are benefiting from the service department. Just one ratio. It is the same ratio that you keep on distributing using that particular one ratio. You're not given different ratios at different points. Okay. So now that is how you call it repeated redistribution. It is there indicated. That question is, I have done it in your handout, so you don't need to. So the second method is called simultaneous equation method. So method number 2 is what you call simultaneous equation method. Sometimes we call it algebra. So under this method, you can say, let X represents the total overheads of department X. This is service department. Then you say let Y represent the total overhead of department Y. And then we use those one to form in question. So you come here and say X is the total overhead of department X plus the allocated overhead. The allocated overhead is, which is equals to, this X is equals to the allocated overhead, which is 86,000 plus it is share. So X gets 10% of Y plus 0.1 Y, total of Y. Are we getting? This is the allocated overhead plus 0.1 Y. So Y gives X 10%, isn't it? Which is the same as 0.1. Then here we say Y is equals to allocated overhead, which is 44,000 plus 0.15 X. Y get 15% from X. Are we together? Now we can be able to solve this one using simultaneous equation. So we can say here X, we can use the X is equals to 86,000 plus 0.1 Y. Why is this equation here? Then now you open the bracket, which is 44,000 plus 0.15 X. So we come here and do 86,000. We open the bracket, 0.1 times 44,000. What do you get? So this one will be 4,400. 0.1 times 0.15 is equals to 0.015x, isn't it? This is equals to X. And then we pick the like terms together. So X minus 0.015x is equals to 86,000 plus 4,400 is how much? $86,000 plus 4,400. You are taking too long to add. 90? So this one 90,400. 90,400. Then now X is the same as 1. 1 minus 0.015 is how much? Huh? 1 minus 0. Is how much? So 0.985x is equals to 90,400. So X, you divide both sides by, this one goes with this, and this one is 0.985. So X will be how much? Sorry? 91,776. So we can round it off 7, isn't it? So that one will be the overhead. And then here we come here and get the Y. So Y, we can use this equation here to get the value of I. So it's going to be 44,000 plus 0.15. We have already got the X, which is 9,777. So what do you get? Eh? 13. 1377, 776. 13,776 like this. Is it so? Or you're getting a different figure? It is okay. So now that one, and then now you come here, you write now departments. We have department A, department B, C, X, and Y. Then here you write overheads. Overheads here, the one for department X, it was 240,000. So you write there 240,000. So you write here 240,000. And the other one is 180,000. And the other one is 220,000. Then now you give this one is 91,777. This is 13,767. So now you come here and reapportion service. You write your service departments. So you start with X. So now you allocate directly to production. You ignore, you allocate directly to production, not giving the other service department, because you've already given it through the question. Are you getting? So now you come here and use the percentages given. Like this one, you're going to use 30. You're going to use 20%, you give it to A. You use 30% of this, you give to B. So can we do that one very fast? You take 20%. A is benefiting 20% from X. So you take 20% of this figure, you give to A. How much will that be? Sorry? 18,335. 18,355. And then you take 30% of the same, you give to B. 27,532. And then you give 35% of the same to C. 32,121. You don't give to Y. Okay. Then now you come here and give to Y. You allocate the Y. 13,767. So you 13,3. You take 13. That is 13,767 times 0.3, which is 41, 4130, 4130. Then 4130. Then you don't give to X again. Then you add downwardly. So you add 240,000 plus 18,355 plus 4130. So that one will give you 262, 485. And the other one, that is 27,532 plus 180,000 plus 4130. So this one will give you 21,662. Then you go to the last one, which is 220,000 plus 321,21 plus 4130. So that one will give you 256, 251. So that is what we call simultaneous equation method. That is how we do it. So we go to the second last method, we call it step down method. Step down method. So this one I've done it in the handout, isn't it? And then there's this very question also, the one that I gave you for assignment, that one for 2017, it also requires you to do the same. So you can as well do it. Are we together? Yes. Yeah. Times. And then you multiply. Or you didn't add. So now that you add it, can you add? So when you add, what do you get? You add it. So that one 91,777 times 0.15 plus 44,000. So this one is to be, it's supposed to be have been 57. So this one is supposed to be 57,767, isn't it? 7767. So this one is wrong here. This one, the allocation here is wrong. So it's supposed to be 57,767, isn't it? Then now you take 30% of that figure. How much is it? Huh? 17,329, isn't it? 17,330, isn't it? This one is 17,330. 17,330, 17,330. So here we had forgotten to add 44,000, isn't it? So it changes everything here. So you add downwardly. So basically that is how we do using simultaneous method. We'll keep on doing this until you are aware or you are able to do it. So we go to the second last method, we call it we go to the second last method, we call, yes. Some questions will give you direction. And some questions will just be silent, so use the one that you like. Like me, I like simultaneous equation. Eh? They differ a little bit. Like this one, simultaneous and repeated distribution, they are almost the same, which differs with the step down and the other one. So we come here to what we call the step down method, step down method. So here we write, we have department A, B, C, and then X, Y. So this one, we have the overheads that have been allocated. Say it was 240, is it so? And B? The overheads of B? 180. C it is 220. 220. This one is 86, isn't it? This one is 44,000. So now here, so far service department, you identify the service department that gives the other service department the highest percentage. You identify the service department that gives the highest percentage. And then you distribute the overhead first and you close that department. So identify the service department that gives the highest. Like for example, X gives a 15 to Y and Y gives 10 to X gives 15 to Y and Y gives 10 to X. So the one that gives the highest is X, isn't it? So we're going to distribute the overhead of X first. So this is 86,000. And we close that department using the percentages given. So the percentages given is it 20%? Is it? So 0.2 times 86,000, which is 17. So this one is going to be 17,200. The other one, excuse me. So it gives how much? 30%. 30% of 86,000. That one is 25,800. And the other one is how much? 35% of 86,000. That one is 3,100, isn't it? And then it gives 15% of 86,000. So that one is 12,900. So now you close this department. And then you add this one, 44 plus 44,000. So this one will be 56,900. And then now you distribute using to other department and ignoring this one in accordance to how they are benefiting from it. So you distribute using 30%. So this one will be 17,070, 17,070, 17,070. That is how we do with what we call step down method. So we add them downwardly to 40 plus 17,200 plus 170, 070. So this one would be 274 to 70. 180,000 plus 25,800 plus 170, 70. So that is how we use. And then lastly is what we call direct allocation. Direct allocation. Direct allocation. The last method is called direct allocation. So I'll give you a minute to breathe in, and then we continue. Sasa. had enough break, we can continue. So now the last method is called direct allocation. Now under direct allocation, we have department A, B, C, X, and Y. So we write here the overheads. So here we have 240,000. Then the other one is 180,000. 220,000. This is 220, I think so. I think they don't. 220. It was 220, isn't it? 86,000 and 44,000. So now this one you allocate to production department, ignoring the service department. So there we come here and say service department. So we start with X. So you allocate this 86,000 to these other departments, you don't give to this one. So use which ratio? You use the ratio that is given there. The ratio is so you use the provided ratio. The ratio is it is 30:2. Hiyo ratio mnaona kweli ama mmechoka tumalize class? So we have the ratio which is the provided ratio is 20 to 30, 35, isn't it? So 20 plus 30 is 50, plus 35 is 85. So here we're going to take 20 out of 85. 20 out of 20 divided by 85, and then you're going to give to times 86,000. So you come out to Meloana. So this one is going to be 20, 235. And this one is going to be 30 divided by 85 times 86,000. That is going to be 352. This other one is 0.35, isn't it? 35 divided by 85, isn't it? And then you multiply times 86,000. So 35 for 12. And then now we come here and allocate Y. Y is 44,000. 44,000, it is 30 times 3 is 90. So it will be 30 divided by 90 times 44,000. So this is going to be 14. This is going to be 14,667. 14,667, 14,667. So that is what we call direct allocation. Direct allocation. Then you add them downwardly. You add them downwardly. Tumeelewana? That is direct allocation. We have there NB. In some cases, the basis of reapportioning or apportioning the overheads from the service department to the production departments are given. In some other questions, you are given the method to use. Okay, so you don't use the normal one. So now we go back to this question. We go back to this question of June 2010, question number 1. This one I delete it. It is there in the note, so don't worry about it. So we go back to this question of June 2010, question number 1. June 2010, question number 1. So now, part 2 of the question wanted us to reapportion the service department costs to production. So remember the service department here were 3 departments. So we want to reapportion this cost to these 2 departments. So here we can write reapportionment. We can just write here somewhere here, reapportionment. We can just write here reapportionment. So we have been given, in this question, we have been given the method to use. Like for example, the values of issues of material to the production department are in the same proportion as for consumable supplies. So this shows it serves just these 2 departments. It serves the machining and assembly. And you have been told we share this cost in accordance to consumable supplies. In accordance to, so the consumable supplies here, we have the consumable supplies. Consumable supplies of department machining, it is 123,200. department assembly, it is 16,800. So we add these two. We add those two. Can we add it? So this is 123, 200 plus 16,800. That is how much? 140,000. So this is 140. So machining, it will take 123,200 over 140,000, and then you multiply by the cost, which is 60069. And then assembly, it will take 16,800 over 140,000 times 60069. So this one will give you, so 123,200, you divide by 140,000, you multiply by 60069. So this one will give you 52,861. And this one is 16,800 divided by 140,000 times 69. So this one is 72,08. So now we are sharing this one. We say here stores. We say here stores. This is 60069. So we write here, this is 52,861. And this other is 72,08. And then we had a sentence there that I had told you to write or to note it down at the beginning, after the first paragraph, which they had told us that the engineering services department, this department serves the machining department. Oh, there was that sentence. It's not visible there. It's a little bit deleted, but that sentence reads like that the engineering service department serve the machining department only. So we're going to redistribute this overhead to machining. So here we come here, engineering. So the total overhead here is 74,886. So we're going to write here dash, then we write here 74,886. And lastly, we have been told number 6, not number 6. The general service expenses are apportioned based on production direct labor hours. This one, we use the labor hours. We use the labor. So we have the labor hours here, labor hours. The labor hours for machining, it is given there, it is 350,000. And the other one for assembly, it's how much? 300,000. So here we delete this one, we delete this one. We delete this, we delete this. So 5 can go into that 5 how many times? 7. And into that how many? 6. So here we use, this is general support. We use 7:6. This is 72,691. This one we have been told. So we use 7 out of, so 7 plus 6 is how much? 13. So 7 divided by 13 times 72,691. 39,140. 39,141. And then we do the same, 6 divided by 13 times 72,690. It is 33,550. So now we will have distributed this one. So the total overhead is here now. We add this one downwardly. The total overhead will be 691,760 plus 52,861 plus 74,886 plus 39,141. So it should be 858,648. Then the last one is 134,914 plus 7208 plus 33,550. So that one will be 175,672. So that is how, at that point, we are through with what we call allocation and reapportionment. In this particular question, we had been given the specific way of redistributing this cost through the production departments. Are we together? So that is, now we go to the last aspect of this topic. We call it absorption of overheads. Go to the last aspect of this particular topic. So we have already done allocation. We have done reapportionment. Now we go to the last portion of it. We call it absorption of overheads. So we call it absorption of overhead. Overhead absorption or absorption of overheads. So when you go to the notes, that is the last portion. So let us understand what we mean by absorption. Absorption means to recognize the overhead cost to the final product. It is to charge the overhead cost to the final product. That is overhead absorption. So when you go to the notes I've written there, it is the process of charging overhead to the units produced or jobs for costing purposes. Absorption is done after overheads have been allocated, apportioned, and reapportioned to production department. So it's the last aspect of overheads after we have allocated, and then we have reapportioned. So that is the last thing we do. In most cases, overhead absorption rate is determined using the budgeted data and not the actual data. So remember, we use the budgeted data. When we are doing our costing, when you're doing our costing, we want to cost a product, isn't it? The overhead we can only know the overhead at the end of the process. The total overheads can only be known at the end of the pro. But these two other costs, that is material and labor, we can be able to tell at the beginning, isn't it? But now we want to estimate the total cost at the beginning. And therefore we estimate the overheads. Overheads are normally estimated at the beginning. So this one you have been allocated, these one are either budgeted or historical. Are we together? This overhead that you have been allocating here are either budgeted or historical. To budget means to estimate. When you budget, you are estimating. So these are estimated overheads. Why do we estimate overheads? It is not possible to know the overhead at the onset of production. You can only know the overheads at the end. Are we together? So we estimate. And we use, when we are estimating, we use an estimation method. We call it overhead absorption rate, which is budgeted overheads, budgeted overheads over the base. So we get this. So we use so the absorption is done using a suitable overhead absorption rate. A suitable overhead absorption rate. We are reading the notes. The following formula, overhead absorption rate, this is the estimation rate, the rate which we use to estimate, which is budgeted overhead over the base. The base is the method being used for absorption. The base being the method used for absorption. And this method we can either use material cost. We can either use material cost as the base. We can either use labor cost, or we can use the prime cost, or we can use the accumulated cost, or we can use the accumulated cost, or we can use the machine hours, or we can use the labor hours. So we can use the labor hours, machine hour, accumulated cost, prime cost, they are written there. So when you're using the cost, you must multiply here by 100. When you're using the cost, you must multiply by 100. So let me demonstrate what I really mean by this. Let me demonstrate. For example, here, we have three products. We have two products. We have product A. This is now a product. And we have another product called B. And then here we have the material cost. We have the material cost. For example, here it's 10,000. And here is also 10,000. And then we have the labor cost. The labor cost, maybe here it is 5,000 and here is 5,000. So we want to estimate the overheads. We want to estimate the overheads. And we want to use the material cost as our base. Our material cost as our base. And then the budgeted overhead, we say, the budgeted overhead is 10,000. That is the estimated overheads. So the base here, overhead absorption rate, is going to be budgeted overheads over the base. The base here we are saying is material cost. If it is cost, you must multiply by 100. We are looking at the absorption rate. So now our budgeted overhead, you are saying it is 10,000. So you write here 10,000. Material cost, it is 10 plus 10, which is 20,000. And then you multiply by 100. This one will get 50%, isn't it? So now we're going to take 50% of this. That one is going to be overhead cost. So this one is going to be how much? 5. Then 50% of that, which is 5. Now we can be able to determine the total cost of that product, isn't it? And that is not the end. At the end of the process, again, we are going to compare the estimated overhead and the actual overheads. And therefore, now we can get what we call over and under absorption. If this estimated is more than the actual, we call it there is over absorption. If the estimated is less than the actual, we say there is under absorption. So this is a budgeted. This one that you have been allocating, this one is called budgeted overhead or historical. So are we together? So now I've given you the basis of which we can be able to absorb overhead. When it comes to absorption, we estimate. We can't be able to use the actual because it will be known at the end of the production process. There are factors we consider when selecting a method of overhead absorption. So you need to know those factors. And then down there, now we come up and finish up our question, this question here, before we go. Before we go back to, now after having known what we mean by absorption of overhead, we finish up our question. We finish up our question. So the question now required us to do what we call overhead absorption rates for the two production departments. So they wanted us to determine the overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate. So we have a department called machining. So we check the data that we have. We said we can either use the base as material cost, labor cost, machine hours, labor hours, accumulated cost, isn't it? Or prime cost. Prime cost is a combination of material and labor. Now, when we check from the data we have, there's nowhere we can see material costs. Therefore, we rule out material cost. There's nowhere we can see labor cost. Therefore, we rule labor cost. But we can see we have machine hours, isn't it? So the most suitable one for machining department will be machine hours. So we write here budgeted overheads over machine hours. Over machine hours. So the budgeted overhead are this one, 858, 648. The machine hours in that department is how much? 900. Is it 90,000? I think it's 90,000. It is not, it is 90,000. Eh? You have the machine hours, it is greater than 90,000. So 858, 648 divided by 90,000. So it is 6 shillings. So this one will be the suitable shillings, 9.5 per hour. And then we go to assembly. So the most suitable one will be budgeted overheads over the machine hours. The machine hours. So the budgeted overhead is 175, 672. The machine hours for, sorry, the labor hours. We use the labor hours here. Assembly department uses the labor hours. Here, the suitable one will be the labor hours. To assemble things, we use labor, isn't it? So the labor hours in that particular department is 300,000. So here we divide by 300,000. So we divide that one by 300,000. So it will be 175, 672 divided by 300,000. So that one will be shillings 0.585 per hour. And the last thing before we close up, we have what we call over and absorption. Of course, I've told you what it is, over and absorption. Over absorption occurs when the overheads, when the absorbed overheads are more than the actual, and vice versa. So there are causes of over and under absorption. For example, number one, wrong estimation of overhead cost. So when you estimate, you need to be just there about. When you compare with the actual, the deviation should be very minimal. But if the deviation is that huge, there must be a reason. And the reasons are highlighted therein. We have number one, wrong estimation of overhead cost. Number two, wrong estimation of the output. And number three, fluctuation in the amount of overhead in the organization due to economic factors such as inflation, interest rate changes, etc. And then there are unforeseen changes in production capacity. And lastly, the unexpected changes in method of production and manufacturing. So next time, we'll do more questions on the same topic, that is on Sunday. We'll cover more questions on this topic, but essentially, that is how that topic should be. So that one will be the end of our class today, unless you have a question that we need to look at before we close up today. The date, I'll have to sign against your name. So that is the end of our class today, unless you have a question. If you're an online student and you don't have notes, you can always reach out so that we can share the notes and question papers. So there being no question, you have a question? So that one will be the end of our class today. I've given you some assignment, isn't it? So I've given you some assignment, and probably before we very close up, you can also check November 2015. November 2015. This is an additional question. November 2015. November 2015. November 2015. Is it November 2015? September. November 2015, question number 4. Additional assignment, November 2015, question number 4. November 2015, question number 4. Assignment. So I've given you 2 questions you can attempt. If you're online, you can scan and forward, and then we'll have time and look at it. Otherwise, thank you very much for your cooperation today.